say a few comments on that as we get started. So yes, we are doing a number of listening sessions as part of, we're doing a lot of different ways of touching different groups, but we did think SFX a little special and unique, and we wanted to make sure that we open up this conversation so that the needs of small firms are reflected in our agenda work. So let me tell you a little bit about like what we're doing. So I don't know if you're aware, but in 2019, we did issue an architectural research agenda. But it was a little misaligned. So it came out a year, right before the climate action plan. It came out like 2 years, kind of to 1.5 years before the last strategic plan. And so when we did that, we realized we really should be aligned with AIA's with the strategic plan, right? It allows us to activate the principles in the plan, but be future forward, right? What are the research questions we need to help us move on the things that we're saying are strategic importance to the Institute, right? And so by updating that agenda, by keeping us kind of in those conversations, we continue to be like the leading voice. So it's kind of tied to knowledge, it's tied to advocacy, and it's tied to our investments. And so the goals of it are sort of threefold. The first is for people who are actively in research, having AIA say research subjects are important, allows them to help get funding from potential funders. So it kind of gives credence to the issues that researchers and the current research questions that in practice or academia or elsewhere that are helping the architectural profession kind of have this organizational backing. So that's number one. Number two, AIA does commission research and studies from time to time. We also have some grant programs as well. And so how do we prioritize those investments also against the themes in the agenda? So it's intended to, again, align our strategies with where our investments and our calls for action are. And then also very important and a key theme that we want to talk about today is sort of how our membership will use it, how we disseminate research, how we promote research literacy, and how we engage firms and the needs of firms in those conversations. So those are sort of our overall goals. And then just as a refresher, I can't see anybody. So because my computer is being weird, so I don't want to do too many things. But hopefully you've all heard of PACE, our new strategic plan. But just as a quick reiteration, the PACE stands for Practice, Advocacy, Climate, and Equity. And these are kind of the points that are in the plan up on the slide. So I won't reread those, but except to say that the research agenda has ways of connecting thematically in with practice, climate, and equity. And then it's a partnership in the advocacy work that we do, right? And so with that, I will include a quick note on research and the definition. So in the research agenda we did in 2019, there is a section that's on how we're defining research in this context. When we asked a member, so there was a great breakout session on research. I worked a few of those, but also gives me an excuse to attend them. That was on research and practice and the intersection point of those two things. And there was a poll to the audience, right, which were people, represented people that, reflect I don't know if anyone on this committee, but like people in the SFX universe. And the question was like, what do you do first when you want to do research or need research? And everyone was like, Google, ChatGPT, go to the internet. Like those were the things that people did. And that's information gathering, it's knowledge gathering, but it's not research. Do you see what I mean? So, but the definitions of research do go all the way to sort of that information gathering. I have a query all the way to so the principles of a research study, right? So I have a research question. I do an experiment to test that question or that hypothesis. It's repeatable, and I can disseminate those or understand that work in a way that can be applied in different methods, right? So that's sort of the span of research, and we are kind of talking about the latter, but even that latter piece can mean academic peer-reviewed content. It can mean things that happen at firms that often aren't published through that type of rigor. And for us, we do mean that inquiry piece, but we don't mean as much that it has to be a peer-reviewed type of content. We also defined there's kind of two types of research. One is basic research. So this is research that takes a lot of money, doesn't have a specific action or output, and is multi-year. And so that is usually very well positioned to happen at academia, right? Who doesn't have those same return on investments, doesn't pay for research in the same way. And then there's applied research, which is intended for that very word, right? It's research that's going to be applied for a specific action. And AIA has said that our position is to support research that's in the applied research space, and that our partners in academia are well positioned to do basic research and some of those fundamental research questions. We can advocate that and obviously support that work, but our agenda is going to focus on the things we need to do the work of architects, whether that's today or in the scope of work that becomes sort of the potentially future of the profession, or that we're moving in that way. Does that answer that question for right now? Oh, listen, the silence means for the sake of moving on, that answers that particular question as we go in. So there will be more, and we will elaborate on that. I will just add that the first, I've been at AIA for a little, wait, 11 years now. And my first few years, that is all people wanted to talk about, like defining the word. And I felt like we were spinning our wheels and there was too much in defining a word, and then we didn't move on, right? Because we were just too tied up in the word. So we sort of took a stake in the ground, said this is sort of what we're talking about. But we know that there is a lot to be had in that rich discussion. It's just, I don't like wheel spinning, right? We do need to try to move something forward. I'm sure you all can kind of relate to that situation. So we do not want you to hear from me, but we wanted to give you some context. So what we'd like to do for the rest of the session is Kelsey's going to put a link, if she hasn't already, because I don't have the chat, to a mural board, which she did already look, because I just pulled up the chat. So we're going to be using that for the rest of the session. And we have we're going to break it into three questions. One, is that very question. What does it mean to you? So a little bit less about sort of the formal definition that I kind of went through, but can include that. Like when you think research, what does it mean to you? I'll leave it kind of open. And then we're going to have, so that's an individual. You post your thought to the board. You can start doing that now as I'm talking if you'd like. Make sure it's working for you and you're getting online. The second, and you'll see in Kelsey's board, it's kind of an open, and then Kelsey will share her screen when I close this out, just so you guys can see how that looks. But we have a question on need, and this is where we'll put you in little breakout groups to talk amongst each other and use the board to capture those thoughts. And then we're going to bring you, and then the second one is about outcome. And then we're going to bring you both. I'll stop sharing, Kelsey, so you can share the screen. And then we'll bring it back together and we'll look at the board and we'll have a little bit of a moderated discussion. So I'm not going to do the report out. Your notes will be captured. You can also come back if you have more notes. And then we also have a survey vehicle. So we're having this discussion with you, but AI has a lot of member groups that we wanted input from, but we didn't hold listening sessions with everybody. So we do have a survey if you have other thoughts that you'd like to share along the same conversation points we're having today. Okay, Kelsey, any questions about that? I'm sure being a part of an AI member group, you're used to breakouts and mural boards.
Yeah, feel free to grab a sticky note. They're kind of lined up for easy access, or you can, if you prefer to just create one wherever you are, yes, please take a sticky note and put it into the gray area with your comments.
Can somebody explain this interface? I have not experienced it before.
Sure, Kelsey.
Sure. So essentially, it's a digital whiteboard. So the one sort of with the red column, that's for everyone to pull in a yellow sticky note and add your comment there. And then we are going to break up into a couple groups, and then we'll populate the sort of second row of boards. So I think Ali will be able to break us into groups. We might need to like nominate one person from each group to maybe um, put a sticky with their name on it. I'm not sure if the groups will sort of number us, so we'll maybe take a minute to just make sure we're each in a separate workspace. But Lori, does that give you a little bit of a sense of it?
It kind of does, but it
Okay.
has a lock on it on that thing on my screen at
Okay.
least, and I
The
don't know where the sticky notes are.
So the sticky notes
Sorry.
are all the little yellow squares, so those should be movable.
Okay.
Else should be locked so that you don't move it around accidentally. But everything should be locked that should be locked, and the yellow stickies should be movable. So just
Okay.
grab one. Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Darwin. And my apologies. I'm so used to hopping on AIA member group calls where they have used this tool. So I do apologize to Lori and the rest of the group for the reminder, Darwin. Um, okay, so let people give you a few minutes to get used to that, answer questions, and then we will move you into breakouts. And then Kelsey and I will pop around to kind of remind the task. So we will tell you which group you're in. And then in your group, have a discussion, right? Share the thoughts that you guys have collectively and individually. Um, and we would like you on the second one, we'll come around and remind people to see if you can come to consensus on the one on a study that you think would really help small firms and help the profession, or help you personally in your work. But see if you guys can come to an agreement after you post all your thoughts. Um, and we'll kind of give you time checks in the next.
And Michelle,
Any,
let me know when you want me to break out.
yeah, any other questions? I want to kind of just make sure people
Yeah,
are.
I have a quick question. How do I make these bigger so I can actually see them? I can't seem to make them larger. They're so tiny on my screen. They're
Yeah,
like postage stamps.
thank you, Darwin.
Zoom in or use the grips.
Ah, okay.
Click,
Thank
click
you.
on the box. Yeah.
And the bottom, there's also the bottom left, there's a little map, if you see that. So you can see the whole board. And then the little plus and minus also allows you to zoom in.
I apologize if I was arrived late, but I see there's also a question in the chat in general. Could you please send the link to the board?
Yeah, Kelsey, can you post
Yep,
that?
it's in there, and I'm not sure if that I'm able to pin it. I will try again, but maybe Ali, you can pin it.
Yeah, I was trying. It didn't look like there was a pin option.
There it is.
Yeah,
Sure.
100%.
Okay, so Ali, I think you're going to be able to divide us into 6 groups. It will be random.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think we're ready.
And then just one other quick thing. I could say this in the recap, but not only will we share what you guys talked about, but we will keep you apprised along the way of our progress so that you sort of see how things are developing.
All right. Creating the groups now.
Thanks, Darwin.
Josh, I don't know how I missed you at conference, but
Yeah.
I saw Will and a whole bunch of other people. But sometimes that's the way it happens. So
Oh,
yeah.
well, that's good. It could have been simply because my leg is busted and I've been hobbling around, so I was
Oh,
not working in the normal flow of things.
that's
But
not fun at a conference.
yeah,
Jeff, I missed you also.
I tried to be available and around. I am still recovering. I think as it's age and conferences are and recovery kind of line up with hangovers too. I think there's a direct correlation in between all of those. So
Yes. Yep, we're group 3. Group 3.
data or research to make a decision. Well, fee structure, we're not allowed to talk about fees, so there's that. Um, um, yeah, so I mean, basically without finding data, I tend to, with fees, stuff like that, I tend to do, run it square footage wise, run it as a percentage of the cost of construction. And, before I do any of that, I take, whatever hours I think it's gonna do, and I filter that through and give my gut, and then I compare all of them. So essentially, in a way, I'm doing my own research and my own study, using our own internal data. All right, so we do our own internal analysis. Uh, yeah,
I check with my local listserv. We have like 300 people on the listserv.
yeah,
So if I need something, I just, whether research, if I don't know it, I can't find it, I just send a email out to the group.
Yeah, I mean, I leverage
total research.
Yeah.
leverage your network. I mean, I reach out to SFX, the local SFX and our SFX Slack channel all the time to see to get somebody to point us in the right direction. Interestingly, is at least a couple of months back pointed us in the right direction when I reached out to her for some help with the AI stuff. But leveraging the network, I think, is important. I also think I'm a little bit old school, like I still have a library that's actually books. And so I'll go through, like if I'm looking for details or information about a project, I mean, I'm gonna open up some of those older books, some of those, even though they've stopped making them, some of those manufacturer details and stuff like that that we have down, down in our library. And they don't often, you can't get some of those things, they just don't post online, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's new technology is always that challenge of things. I mean, it always comes on board and you try to figure it out, but it's just I remember when, different software platforms that we've picked up over the years and stuff, and they, give you these tutorials or teach you and allow you to do it. It's to, I remember when, different software platforms that we've picked up over the years and stuff, and they, give you these tutorials or teach you and allow you to do it. But then, until you're actually like in the system and actually trying and moving forward, you're not really, it doesn't stick.
Mhm.
So, I really think getting your hands dirty is part of it. But, I agree with Josh. I've still, I've got a ton of books. I've culled out a bunch and thrown away and recycled a whole bunch in the last several months of trying to thin out my supply of things. But, I think it really is that. I mean, it's a combination of all of it. I mean, it's going to your network, it's going to your mentors, it's going to the people that you trust. I mean, the good thing about groups like this and other groups within AIA is you create a whole big national network of folks, and you've got somebody out there that's that knows a little bit more than you, or might know that and have that make that connection of who might bring you to the person that's going to get you the best information. The getting to the primary source is the key, right? I mean, that's it. It's us. That's what small firms do. I mean, we just do it. That was what I would tell people when they would come and want to intern here and learn from me. And everybody that's interned with me over the years has all, moved on to much, much larger, top 10 firms of the country, which is great. But they're just like, yeah, I mean, I learned more working with Jeff than I've learned working with anybody else, just because that's just what you do in a small firm.
Yeah.
You do a little bit of everything and you become an expert in a whole lot of things that you just don't get. Large firms have subject matter experts. Small firms have a lot of experts.
I had an employee who was very vested in sustainability, wanted to become Passive House certified, wanted to know, what I could offer and stuff like that. And I said, well, you just got to do it. You just got to, study, take the test. I said, I'll pay for it and we can go on from there, but you just got to do it, become the expert, and then we can leverage that from there.
Yeah. Roll up your sleeves. For sure.
Darwin, I do that too.
I would love to see some research on the client side, the client intelligence gap. So, who's making hiring decisions? What actually motivates the clients? What do they value? I don't know that anybody has really looked at that before. Large firms kind of know their perfect client, and a lot of that they're going after a lot of this stuff. But that's some research that small firms could really apply.
I'd really like to see a couple of years. I think it was like 6 years ago now, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I was at a conference and I sat in a presentation that was, a firm that was a large firm doing their research on, like they wrote a white paper on, thermal transmission through one of their projects, and how they were able to, through their design, create a reduced thermal transmission. And I had a staff member who sat in on that. And, she came out of that discussion saying, well, I want to do our own research. And she put together a couple of some proposals and things like that. But I think if the AIA could put together a toolkit, honestly, for small firms to be able to do their own research, because, for me, in the end, we tried to take on one of those projects, but it just burned so many hours, it took so much time that in the end we set it aside because we just couldn't afford it. And I think that there has to be a cheat sheet or some way that you can some crib notes, something that would help small firms do their own research.
I mean, unless you got to find a funding source, right? I mean, to make it make sense in a small firm. I mean, you got to find a grant or some other kind of funding source to make that, to leverage that time that it honestly takes to do white paper level of research.
Yeah. I mean, grant, funding source, there has to be
independently wealthy, lottery,
But even just something that could be a list of resources so that, instead of you having to say, I'm going back to that window assembly thing, go back and having to recalculate, all of your systems, for that, or take a lot of technical data, something that's you could access. Like, for example, we did a lead for homes building that came right out about that time. And, we wanted to get the data to determine whether it was performing as good as we had hoped. But doing all that, it was just so expensive. There has to be some, I think, a handbook, something to help small firms do research would be essential for this as part of their agenda.
Yeah, that's something we've heard before. If AI could put together either a roadmap or contract, perhaps even around post-occupancy evaluations and try
But
to.
I think part of it though is there has to be a real understanding for the AIA that, like, we're not the Genslers of the world, right? And our projects, should be able to leverage that same kind of stuff. And honestly, I'm applying for fellowship right now, and part of the fellowship response is, well, they want data, they want verifiable information, for you to submit for fellowship. It's like, well, 6 years ago when I was talking at conference, I didn't count the number of people that were in the room, and stuff like that. I just, how many people did it affect? Well, I could guess, but I don't really know. And so, having some way, something to help inform that, I think would be amazingly useful. And recognizing that it's for small firms versus a large firm, because large firms they have the staff, they have the hours that they can go through, they can burn, and they can allot, tens of thousands of dollars to a research project. Small firm, tens of thousands of dollars, that's your paycheck.
Right.
So I have an example. I went to a session at the conference. A firm got a research grant. They happened to be in Seattle, but that was totally random. And they work with two professors from the University of Washington, and the topic was carbon reduction for small projects slash small firms. And it's something that we typically don't have the time or resources to do. And they're developing a spreadsheet that's very easy to use for small projects slash small firms to analyze at a basic level the carbon possible carbon reduction for your projects. That's an example of research. They were able to get a grant, and I don't remember where they got the grant from, but I think it was between $10,000 and $25,000. So
that's maybe one of the ideas that AIA could maybe put forward as possible funding sources or funding like different areas or different places of where if someone is really interested in this and wants to actually, we're not trained to be researchers, right? Like there's special groups that do this. And we've talked about that on Strategic Council for years. But if there are certain things that we are capable of researching and study, that would be great to be able to maybe point to some different sources to say, okay, look, this is where you can start to do this study or this research or spend this time to kind of help partner with and then fund what you want to look into and what you want to explore. Because at the end of it all, right, you want to leverage that information, right? It has value. So you should be able to put that out there. That firm that has that spreadsheet for the carbon, reduction on that is, I doubt that they're going to give that away for free. That the end of this and the goal of this is either, maybe it is truly altruistic and they are going to give it away for free, but likely, great.
They are giving away for free.
Fantastic. That's great. We need, people that aren't complete capitalists about everything.
So. I did find out, I did look up the session. They were funded by an AIA Upjohn grant.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what I don't know how they went about getting it, but it is an AIA grant.
Right. So somebody needs to put together the time to submit for the grant. I mean, that would be another good research thing, like a toolkit for small firms to submit for grants.
Or how do you write grant proposals, right?
I just submitted for the small project grant. Like I have a client who's in desperate need, and yes, in the end, I'm probably going to volunteer and do the work for free, for them. But that grant would have been awfully helpful to come by, and it's interesting the ones that did win it were all rural out in the middle of nowhere, and this happens to be an urban, an urban client and an urban infrastructure. It's just
here's their join us for this session to hear from a team that received an AIA Upjohn grant to develop a free interactive life cycle carbon tool geared at small firms that do residential architecture. That is so if people were made aware of those, I mean, maybe there are other grants too. Like Josh, you said there's a small project grant.
Small project grant. I mean, it's to provide design funding for a small project.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I mean, it's the AIA one, but I mean, we put together what I thought was a great little submission for, a project that's a, outdoor structure, so it's not heated, not cooled, doesn't require, any of that stuff. But what it's going to do is it's going to allow the client to move back to the site.
So I'd say, these, if grants are an option, if you cannot find that information, Darwin, you look on YouTube and nobody has, a carbon tool or whatever, or Josh, what you're talking about, then it's okay. How do we go about doing our own research? We have to find the time, but also, so usually time is money too.
Yeah, and I think back to that. But Darwin, beyond that, I think there's also like, we have on the community hub, there's a library, right? So we're supposed to post white papers, stuff like that. But even with small research projects, it would be great if there was, a research exchange, type of website or something
That's in process.
that people could, great, that people
It's in
could,
process.
that people,
We've been talking about it for a couple of years of just connecting the research that AIA has and putting it out there in front of members, and then connecting leaders in small firm exchange, council, board, whatever, about the research that's out there and available of the people
Exactly.
of what's in process and what's going on. But the technology team is working on that.
and beyond that. So if you're somebody who wants to do some research on, let's say, because I talked about before, building envelope, right? But you're missing some data, then you can go onto that network and build off of somebody else's data, so that the information, that research exchange kind of thing can then be a useful resource. So when you're starting your research, having others to jump off of is probably I would say essential for a small firm, because, like a big firm might have, libraries and libraries of examples that they've done in-house. But small firms were starting over every time.
Well, I think that, part of this, we got 1 minute here and I got a hard stop in 10 minutes. So a lot of what we talked about here today is about connections, right? And process and putting people together and stuff. What I want y'all to really work on and think about too is specifics of research, like specific things that the AIA could produce and put out there that, would help the development of small firms. What is the information that is lacking that small firms need right now to put them back into the conversation and help them compete with the larger firms? If it is, writing grant proposals and things like that, some of those things are out there, and, maybe establishing a peer review group and network is not a bad thing either to consider and think about within your group. But just think about the specific ask of what you want, and I'm willing to bring it to the board and we can talk about it. So, that's what I'll say. I'll see you on the other room.
We're just reading as Billy pulls you back. Yes, we have 10 minutes. I've been reading thoughts, but yeah, why don't we go around, and if there's a kind of a key insight. Thank you, Darwin. We'll start with one.
Can someone share their mural board maybe? I'm not able to get into it.
There were a few of us, Kyle, Ansley, myself, Marisol, and one other. I'll be I'll be super quick. I think we talked about two topics. One, what is the kind of quintessential technology suite that you need to start a firm? And also, what is the budget? Like, when you start a firm, what does it cost? How much cash do you need to have in the bank in order to actually make something work? And then the other element that we talked about, I'm blanking. I had it in the top of my head. Any help?
This is Ansley. I was just asking for an opportunity to do similarly to the realtor group that had done a market analysis on how to advocate for themselves as the expert in the development industry, and allow for an opportunity for architects to become the master builder again. And I think AI, not AIA, AI is allowing us to have more of those resources to put together feasibility reports and, advocate for projects.
Great, group two. For prolific use of the board, group two is one of the winners.
Yay, group two.
And group six. But who wants to give us a quick distillation?
I'll go ahead if no one is saying anything. We talked about a number of types of things. There's some sort of office processes, office management. Yeah, in the sort of alternate, how do we, first we actually talked about what kind of research we do and how some people just end up finding the stuff. So it wasn't really that much of a topic until we did start writing a little bit more. But there's not that much transparency on consultant fees, I find. It's really sometimes hard consultant fees, project fees. And I know that AIA didn't like to talk about those, but it would be helpful in other industries. I think you are able to see sort of indices and averages of different pieces of information that are financial, and I think it would be helpful. And the type of research that we thought would be helpful is construction costs. I think EUI databases per building type would be really helpful if it's vetted by architects, so that we have clear numbers and metrics to work with. In our office, we're looking for daylighting and energy calculation software. That's such a moving target these days. And then again, the fee structures and construction costs, building types, and regional. Oh, alternate sources so far, peers, business groups, sort of non-architects, AI, paid research, white papers.
Thanks, Karen. Group 3. Oh, I love SFx was on here. It's awesome.
No, it was us, Darwin. It's you.
Right. Group 4. I love this, by the way. Okay, group 4.
I can go if no one else wants to.
All right.
We had a big discussion about fees, and of course, we know that we're limited in what the AIA can help us with. But we talked a little bit about where I've gone for kind of fee framework has been the Royal Institute of Architects out of Canada. And they've got a free guide. I've got the link here, and but it's a 2019, so it's a little bit outdated. But it's a really great guide for, you know, the impact of your particular building type, percentages of construction budget. So it gives you nice ranges of, and I've found it just serves as a great guide, especially for public work. It's more commercially based than residential. And so just a lot about how can we reference and use the AIA? What kind of research can they provide to us on framework of fees? We did a lot of talk about lump sum, hourly, et cetera, et cetera. And then just real quick, some more research. We talked a little bit about energy code implementation. It was interesting. We've got folks from Arizona, Nevada, and some are, and I think it was Oklahoma as well. Some are in 2003 IECC. Some have just adopted 2024 from 2018. So answering a big question, which is payback periods for some kind of financial case that we as architects can use to share with building owners on if they follow or when they follow the 2024 code, what that means. And then some other just interesting design build. We had in Nevada, contractors can design and build a project. They don't need an architectural stamp. And that was pretty interesting to me. So, you know, I know Marcos and Matthew presented on this during the conference this last week, architect-led design build versus contractor-led design build, a lot of nuances in that. So just kind of investigating small firms and how we're approaching design build. Yeah, everything else is on here. Thank you.
I want to respect time. So groups 5 and 6.
I've got to jump to a board meeting at noon, so which is right now. So I just want to say thank y'all for letting me be here. I am your board liaison. I put my contact information there in the chat. If you have anything or any questions or want to talk or chat, we can connect there. But I appreciate y'all being here, and I will follow up with you guys post meeting. Thank you.
Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Take care.
So I want to respect time. So I'll give some closing thoughts, but if groups 5 and 6 can stick around and want to share, thank you guys so much. This is really, really helpful. It also highlighted to me that we do not connect enough to specifically remind you guys of the things that we have available. So I know our newsletters can get lost and press releases and all that good stuff, but a lot of the questions that came up here, we skirt around and have some data around. So I'm going to have Ali send some of those to you following this call, because some of the groups I sat in on, I'm like, oh, we have some stuff on that. Oh, we have some stuff on that. And we will noodle about how we make sure that when a new SFX group starts, that we create a connective thread to maybe things that we shared on a prior SFX group.
Michelle, I think putting it up on the SFX Community Hub and getting it in the library, which is a more permanent location because it transfers from board to, SFX board to SFX board. So that way it creates a resource within the SFX, might be helpful.
Yep, I'll have a Lee. I know. Thank you.
Yeah, so July 9th, I think it's the typologies of practice. I know, Josh, you've been working really hard to get people involved who can speak to the different ways we practice. There's some really great potential topics floating out there. So Josh, anything else?
I would just add that if you feel that your practice model, is unique as a small firm, whatever it is, please reach out to me. We're trying to get a number of people to talk, do sort of a 5-minute quick presentation on their practice model. And so we still have a couple open slots. If I did reach out to you already, please get back to me and verify if you're able to take part. And but it'll be a great session next month. Thanks. Everyone should reach out to Darwin to get interviewed. Great time.
Thank you.